There are two men who could destroy me. One made me, one wants to. I have kept this secret for 25 years, like a wound I refused to let heal, pressing my hand against it every morning just to feel its pulse. His name was Kang Joon-ho. He was Seoul's most feared man, and for one reckless, breathless night, he was also mine. I was young, he was dangerous, and the world we built in those few stolen hours collapsed by morning. I ran. I disappeared. I had a son I named Ryu, and I told him his father was a ghost. What I didn't know was that ghosts come back, and sometimes they come back wearing their father's eyes, their father's jaw, their father's cold, lethal smile, standing across a room from the very man whose blood runs through their veins, guns pointed at each other's hearts. I am the only thing standing between them. I am the only one who knows the truth. And the truth in this world is the most dangerous weapon of all. And before this story unfolds, take a second to like this video and subscribe, because what you are about to hear is not just a story. It's a collision of blood, power, and truth. I remember the rain. It fell the way it always does in Seoul when something irreversible is about to happen. Sideways, furious, like the sky itself was trying to warn me. I was 22, a translator for a textile company, and I had wandered into the wrong bar on the wrong side of Gangnam because I was celebrating getting it so beautifully, tragically wrong about everything. He was sitting alone at the end of the bar, dark suit, darker eyes, the kind of stillness that belonged to men who have nothing left to prove. I should have looked away. Every instinct I had screamed at me to look away. I didn't. His name was Kang Joon-ho. I didn't know it then. I didn't know he ran half of Seoul's underworld from a glass tower in Mapo. I only knew his voice was low and careful, like he chose every word the way a surgeon chooses a blade. He bought me a drink. I bought him one back. We talked until the bar closed and the rain slowed to a whisper. That night, in a hotel room that smelled of cedar and danger, I gave him the only night of my life I have never once regretted and never once been able to forget. By morning, his phone had rung 4 times. Men had come to the door. His world had swallowed him whole right in front of me. He looked at me from the doorway and said, "Don't stay in Seoul." Then he was gone. I didn't know I was already carrying his son. I have kept this secret for 25 years like a wound I refused to let heal. Tell me in the comments, could you keep a secret like this for 25 years? I went to Busan, then to Jeju. Then, when Ryu turned 3 and started asking questions I couldn't answer with half-truths, I moved us to Tokyo and reinvented myself as a woman with no past worth mentioning. I built a life out of small dignities, a good apartment, a better job, a son who was brilliant and fierce and terrifyingly beautiful in a way that kept me awake some nights, searching his face for the man I had left behind. I found him there, always, in the hard line of Ryu's jaw, in the way he went still and quiet when he was angry. Rage pulled somewhere deep and cold, controlled to a degree that frightened me. His father's son in every way I prayed he wouldn't be. I never spoke Kang Joon-ho's name, not once. Not to Ryu, not to my sister, not to the therapist I saw twice in 2009 before deciding that some silences were better left undisturbed. I googled him sometimes, late at night, phone face down on the table before I could stop myself. He had become a legend, the Dragon of Mapo. Kang Joon-ho, who had consolidated 3 rival syndicates under one name and ruled them with the kind of brutal elegance that made newspapers write around the edges of what he truly was. He never married. I noticed that too and hated myself for noticing. The silence held for 25 years. I thought it would hold forever. I was wrong. The silence broke the day my son came home to Seoul and walked directly into the dragon's fire. Ryu had always been too smart and too restless for the ordinary world. He had his father's instincts, an almost animal sense for power, for leverage, for the exact pressure point in any negotiation. By 20, he had made his first million in Tokyo's grey market. By 23, he had a crew of 12 men who'd walk through fire for him. By 25, he had set his eyes on Seoul. He called me from the plane. "Oma," he said in that easy, dangerous voice, "I'm going home." My blood ran cold. "Ryu, the Kang syndicate is fracturing. There's space opening up. I've worked for this." The Kang syndicate, his father's empire. I pressed my hand flat against the kitchen counter and breathed until the room stopped tilting. "I will come with you." And I think some desperate, fractured part of me believed I could still manage this, could still stand between the past and the present and keep them from colliding. I arrived in Seoul on a Tuesday. Ryu was already 3 moves deep into the city's underworld, already being whispered about in the circles that mattered, already accumulating enemies and allies with the terrifying efficiency of a man who seemed born for this life. He was. I knew that better than anyone. Seoul felt the same as I remembered it, loud, electric, hungry. And somewhere in a glass tower above Mapo, an old dragon was watching the new wolf move through the streets and deciding what to do about it. I was not supposed to be at the Cheongdam exchange. I was supposed to be safely ensconced in the apartment Ryu had set up for me in Songbuk-dong, surrounded by good books and a false sense of distance from everything he was doing. But Ryu had left his phone, and I, being his mother and an absolute fool, had driven it across the city in the rain. The restaurants looked ordinary from the outside. Inside, it was anything but. Ryu sat at a round table with 4 of his men, talking quietly, the way his father used to talk, low, precise, impossible to interrupt. Across the room, separated by 30 feet of polished floor and about 1,000 volts of tension, sat the other party. I recognized the cut of the suit before I recognized the faces. Kang Syndicate. I knew their posture, their formality, the specific way they arranged themselves around a table like a display of controlled menace. And then the door at the back opened and he walked in. 25 years. He was 60 now, silver at his temples, a few fine lines I didn't give him, but still impossibly him. Same stillness, same gravity, like a dark star that bent everything toward it. Is kind the room the way powerful men always do, cataloging threats, exits, leverage. His eyes passed over the table, passed over view, stopped on me. For 3 seconds, the whole world held its breath. Then his expression closed like a door, and I understood that the game, whatever game this was, had now irrevocably begun. He didn't approach me that night. He was too controlled for that, too careful. And we were in a room full of men with hair-trigger loyalties and loaded weapons. But I saw it, the way his gaze returned to me twice, then 3 times, each glance fractionally longer than it should have been for a stranger. He remembered me. I could see it like weather moving across his face before he locked it down. Ryu noticed nothing. He was focused entirely on the negotiation or what passed for one. By the time we left, an uneasy accord had been reached. Ryu's crew could operate in 2 eastern districts under certain conditions. A temporary ceasefire dressed in expensive courtesy. Ryu was satisfied. I was terrified. Kang Joon-ho's assistant appeared at my elbow as we reached the door. Young, discreet, the blank face of someone paid not to have opinions. He pressed a card into my hand. No name, just a number, and below it 3 words in small, precise handwriting. We should talk. I showed no one the card. I put it in my coat pocket and I walked out into the wet Seoul night, and I stood on the pavement for a long time with the rain coming down around me, thinking about all the ways a secret kept too long becomes a bomb. Thinking about my son laughing inside, beautiful, dangerous, his father's double, and his father watching from across the room, something shifting behind those dark eyes. Had he seen it? The jaw? The stillness, the particular architecture of that face. Not yet, I thought, but soon, and soon in this world meant someone would bleed for it. The ceasefire lasted 11 days. Ryu's crew intercepted a Kang shipment moving through Songpa. Not deliberately, he insisted, a miscommunication in territory lines. But in this world, intent is a luxury. What matters is the insult, and the insult was received with the full weight of a syndicate that had not been challenged in 15 years. 3 of Ryu's men ended up in hospital. One didn't come out. Ryu, when I found him at dawn, sitting in his kitchen with blood that wasn't his own on his cuffs, had the expression I dreaded most on his face. Not rage, but its cold, calculated cousin, the kind that makes plans. They want a war, he said, so we'll give them one. Ryu, I sat across from him. You don't know what Kang Joon-ho is. You don't know what he's survived, what he's built. He knows exactly what he is. His eyes met mine, flat and certain. He's the past, and the past belongs to people who stop moving. I wanted to tell him the truth right then. The words were there, crowded and desperate at the back of my throat. He is your father. This man you want to destroy is your blood. But Ryu's phone rang and the moment passed like smoke, and I was left sitting at his kitchen table, holding a truth so heavy it had begun to bend me sideways, while my son walked into the next room to plan a war against the man who made him. I called the number on the card at 2 in the morning, standing on my balcony with a glass of cold tea I hadn't touched. He picked up on the second ring. I knew you would call, he said, as if 25 years were a long weekend. Don't, I kept my voice level. Don't do that. Silence. Then, carefully, you look well, Seoul. My name in his mouth after all this time felt like being touched somewhere bruised. I gripped the railing. We need to meet. Not in a restaurant full of guns, somewhere quiet. Hanam-dong, tomorrow, noon, I'll send a car. A pause. Come alone. He was already there when I arrived. A private tea room, the kind of place that asks no questions and keeps no records. He stood when I walked in, which surprised me. He looked older, yes, but in the way mountains look older, not less formidable. I sat down before my legs made the decision for me. We watched each other across a low table for a long moment. The young man, he said finally, leading the crew out of Tokyo. His voice was neutral, careful, but his eyes were not. He has a specific way of going still when he's thinking. My chest locked. I used to do that, he said, when I was young. His gaze settled on mine with the full weight of what he was not yet saying. How old is he, Seoul? I looked at the man I had spent 25 years running from, and I understood that I had run out of road. I told him everything. Not because I was brave, I have never been particularly brave, but because the alternative was letting two men who shared a bloodline end each other, and some weights are simply too heavy to carry alone. I told him about the pregnancy, about Busan, then Jeju, then Tokyo, about raising Ryu alone and watching him grow into something magnificent and frightening, about the years I had spent checking over my shoulder, half expecting and half hoping to find him there. Kang Joon-ho did not speak for a long time. The tea cooled between us. Outside, Seoul moved and breathed and had no idea what was fracturing inside this small, quiet room. You should have told me, he said, not with anger, worse than anger, with the flat certainty of a man accounting for damage. You are a crime lord, I said. What was I supposed to do? Send a card? Congratulations, you have a son. Please don't get him killed in your war. Something moved through his expression. Not quite pain, something older. I would have protected you both. I didn't want protection, I said. I wanted a life. And now your son wants your empire, and he will come for it, Joon-ho. He won't stop. He's exactly like you. The silence that followed had a different quality, heavier, rearranged. He pressed 2 fingers to his mouth and stared at the table, and I watched the dragon of Mapo wrestle with something that no amount of power or violence had prepared him for. The knowledge that he had a son, that the son was coming to kill him, and that somewhere in this disaster, so was I, falling again towards the same dark star I had spent a lifetime trying to escape. Joon-ho wanted to tell Ryu immediately. I said no. I said, tell a man who has spent his whole life building towards this moment that the throne he wants belongs to his father, and watch what happens. That does to him. Watch the ground disappear from under everything he is. We argued in low, furious voices in that tea room for 2 hours. He was accustomed to people who said yes. I was accustomed to carrying impossible things alone. Neither of us gave ground easily. What we agreed on finally was this. Joon-ho would pull back his retaliation. Quietly. He would create an opening, make the war unnecessary, buy me time to tell Ryu myself. In exchange, I would not disappear again. I agreed. God help me, I agreed.
but Ryu was smarter than both of us accounted for. He had noticed the sudden shift in Kang's posture, the inexplicable de-escalation, the pulled soldiers, the breathing room where they should have been none. He started watching, asking questions I couldn't answer without lying, and I had run out of lies I was willing to tell him. He called me one evening, voice deceptively calm. "You went to see him, didn't you? Kang Joon-ho." Not a question. "I had you followed, Oma. I'm sorry, but I needed to know." The room tilted again. "What are you hiding from me?" His voice cracked, just slightly. Just enough to remind me he was still my son, beneath all the armor. "Who is he to you?" And I stood in my kitchen with 25 years of silence pressing against the inside of my ribs like a fist, and I finally, irrevocably opened my mouth. I didn't tell him on the phone. Some things cannot be said into a device and left to travel through air and wire. I asked him to come to the apartment. He arrived in 20 minutes, still in his jacket, still smelling of the cold Seoul night. He sat across from me and his eyes were his father's eyes, watchful, waiting, unreadable. I went to my bedroom. In the drawer under my winter scarves, behind a small box of documents, was an envelope I had carried from country to country for 25 years. Inside, one photograph, slightly creased at the corner, taken in a hotel bar in Itaewon in 2001. A young woman looking sideways at the camera, laughing. Beside her, one dark suited arm visible, the edge of a jaw, a hand around a glass. I gave it to Ryu without speaking. He looked at it for a long time. I watched him study the jaw, the hand, the set of the shoulder. I watched the moment he understood not as a thought, but as a physical thing moving through him like a current. "No," he said quietly. Then, "No," with more weight. "Ryu!" He said the name like he was testing whether it would break his teeth. "Kang Joon-ho. You are telling me that Kang Joon-ho is..." He stopped, set the photograph down with great precision on the table between us. That is why he pulled back. He found out when I told him. He doesn't want this war either, Ryu, not with you. My son stood up, walked to the window, stood with his back to me for such a long time that I began to be frightened of what he was becoming in the silence. When he finally turned, his face was a controlled devastation I recognized as inherited. "I need to think," he said, and he walked out. He was gone for 3 days. 3 days in which I did not sleep, barely ate, and watched my phone with the obsessive focus of a person waiting for news from a war front. Joon-ho called twice. I didn't answer. There was nothing I could tell him that would make things worse. On the 3rd day, I broke. I put on my coat and I went to the glass tower in Mapo because I was a woman who had spent 25 years holding things together with her bare hands, and I was finally absolutely out of strength. The security let me up. Of course they did. He had instructed them to. He was standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows when I came in, Seoul spread beneath him like something he owned. He turned, and for a moment we just looked at each other, and I felt the full absurd weight of it. The rain bar in Gangnam, the hotel, the morning, the running, all of it folded up into this moment in this room above this city. "I'm sorry," I said. "I should have told you. I was afraid." "Of me?" He came towards me slowly, like you approach something you are afraid of startling. "Of this," I gestured at the space between us, "of what it would mean, what it would cost." He stopped very close to me, close enough that I could see the silver in his hair, the fine new lines at the corners of his eyes that I had not given him, but had perhaps been partly responsible for. "And now," he said, "I had spent 25 years being sensible, being careful, being a woman who survived by keeping moving. And standing there, I was so tired of surviving. Now, I don't know," I said honestly. "I don't know anything anymore." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, and the tenderness of it, from this man, in this city, after all this time, undid me completely. Ryu came back on the 4th day and ignited everything. Not the war I had feared, not the guns, not the territory, not the syndicate war that would have swallowed them both. Something quieter and infinitely more destructive. He went directly to Kang Joon-ho and arranged a meeting alone without telling me. I found out from Joon-ho's assistant, who sent a brief message. They are together, penthouse, it's quiet, so far. So far, I was in a taxi to Mapo before I fully processed that I was moving. My hands shook the whole ride there. I tried to imagine what they were saying to each other. This man of 60 who built an empire with his hands, and this boy of 25 who was a mirror of him in all the ways that matter. And I couldn't. There were no words I knew for that encounter. I arrived when the elevator opened directly into the penthouse. They were seated across from each other at a table, 2 glasses of scotch, no weapons visible. The air had the specific quality of a storm that has passed, leaving debris. They both looked up when I appeared. Ryu's expression was something I had never seen on his face before. Cracked open, reassembled, still raw at the edges. He had been crying. My son, who never cried, had been crying.
Joon-ho stood. Soo-yeon, his voice was rough. What happened? I looked between them. What did you say to each other? Ryu stood too. He crossed the room and pulled me into a hug that nearly broke me with its force. My child, my complicated, magnificent child, holding on the way he hadn't since he was small. Against my hair, he said, "He told me about the night he met you. He said you were the only thing he ever let himself want that he didn't take." I looked over Ryu's shoulder at Joon-ho, who was watching us with an expression of such naked, unguarded feeling that I had to look away. This man who ruled a city with iron patience, undone by one night 25 years ago, and everything it had cost all of us. The weeks that followed were the strangest of my life, stranger even than the years of running, because now we were 3 people sitting in the wreckage of a secret, trying to decide what to build from it, and none of us had ever done anything like this before. Ryu and Joon-ho met 4 more times in that penthouse. I was not always present. Twice, Ryu told me afterward what they'd discussed. Twice, he didn't. And I learned to respect the privacy of men discovering they share a bloodline in the middle of a criminal empire. What I noticed from the outside was the eerie accuracy of the mirrors. The way they both pressed 2 fingers to their mouths when thinking. The way they reached for their glass before speaking in a difficult conversation. The quality of their silences, weighted, precise, never quite empty. Ryu noticed it too. I could see it unsettling him. This evidence that he was not entirely self-made, that there was an architecture to him that predated his choices. He didn't like it, but slowly, grudgingly, I watched him begin to be fascinated by it. Joon-ho, for his part, seemed to be doing something I had never expected from him. Softening, not visibly, never visibly, but the men around him noticed a shift, fewer retaliations, more patience, as if the knowledge of his son had given him something to protect beyond his own legend. And me? I was watching 2 dangerous men discover each other, and I was falling, with no particular grace or wisdom, back toward the one who started all of this. Standing in his orbit again, feeling the pull of that old dark gravity, wondering if I was brave enough, finally, to stop running. It couldn't stay contained forever. This was always the thing I knew but refused to fully reckon with, that a truth this size, shared between 3 people in a world full of people who traded in information, would eventually breathe outward. It was a rival faction that exposed it, a splinter group from the old days, men with long memories and longer grudges, who had been watching Kang Joon-ho's unusual restraint with suspicion. They found, through sources I still don't fully know, the shape of it, the heir, the mother, the old knight in Gangnam. They went public inside the underworld with the information the way these things always go. Not through press releases, but through whispers, through leverage, through the selective distribution of photographs and documents. By the time Joon-ho and Ryu knew about it, every serious player in Seoul's criminal ecosystem knew that the Dragon of Mapo had a son, and that his son had come to take his throne. The political calculations that followed were brutal and swift. Some of Joon-ho's lieutenants saw opportunity in the fracture. Some of Ryu's crew felt betrayed. They had signed on to take down the Kang Empire, not join it. Alliances shifted, threats were made. 3 men were killed in a week who probably didn't deserve to be. Ryu came to me in the middle of it, exhausted for the first time I could remember, and sat at my kitchen table like a child. "Tell me this was worth it," he said. "Tell me knowing is better than not knowing." I looked at my son, fierce, tired, terrifyingly alive, and thought of all the versions of this story that could have ended worse, all the ways the blood could have been literal and final and irreversible. "Yes," I said, "knowing is always better." I took his hand. "We'll get through the rest." It took 6 more months to stabilize. 6 months of negotiations, consolidations, a few carefully targeted confrontations that I chose not to ask about in detail. Joon-ho was methodical about it. He had been building this empire for 30 years, and he knew every weakness, every seam. With Ryu beside him, learning with the terrifying speed of someone who was always meant for this, the fractures were sealed one by one. They were not father and son the way families in ordinary houses are. There were no dinners, no soft conversations. There was strategy, respect, the particular closeness of men who recognized each other's nature. But I watched something grow between them that I had no name for. Not love exactly, not yet, but its precondition, the willingness to see each other clearly and not look away. Joon-ho asked me to stay in Seoul. Not with grand declarations, he was not a man built for those. He asked me over tea in that same Hannam-dong tea room, in the plain, careful language of a man who learned that wanting something quietly does not mean wanting it less. I said yes. God help me. I said yes. I am not naive about what I am saying yes to. This city, this world, the specific glamour and darkness of the life that chose these 2 men before I could do anything about it. But I have spent 25 years making choices shaped by fear, and I am finished with that particular architect. There are scars in this story. There always were. But here's what I have learned, standing between a father and his son on a night when Seoul glittered below us like a field of cold stars. Silk is most beautiful when you can feel the thread. And the thread of this family, complicated, blood-stained, late by decades, is real. It holds. My name is Oh Soo-yeon. I kept a secret for 25 years that almost ended in disaster, and instead ended in this: my son knowing who he is, the man I never forgot knowing I never forgot, and all of us finally in the same city. The rain has started again. In Seoul, it always does. This time, I am not running.